RealAgriculture.com's coverage of the Southwest Ag Conference in Bridgetown, Ontario was brought to you by C&M Seeds, Pride Seeds, and High Stick NT. We're joined today by Peter Johnson from Omafra, the wheat specialist. Welcome today, Peter.
Thank you very much, Sean. Glad to be here.
Peter, in the presentation today, you talked about the possibility of 20 bushels more from your wheat crop. Where is that research coming from?
We've just finished the 3-year study, and it's kind of intriguing because way back, like for my whole career, I've looked at nitrogen rates, and I can tell you before I go to the field pretty much what the yield increase will be if I go from a 90-pound nitrogen rate to a 120-pound nitrogen rate, and it just doesn't work most of the time. It doesn't seem to be there. Also, same with fungicides. You know, I apply a fungicide, I'm going to get, depending on when I apply it and everything, 6, 7, 8 bushels per acre. That's just what you get. Just
right.
Count on it. And I have over 100 site years of data on some of those points to say that. But what we never did, and what the Europeans would say, is that it's not the two by themselves, it's the interaction. And you need the nitrogen there to give the crop the yield potential, but then if you don't use the fungicide to keep the crop healthy and green so it can use the nitrogen,
right.
Then it all falls apart.
So are they just getting 20 bushels more because they're using fungicide?
No, we're getting 20 bushels more by increasing our nitrogen rate and by using the fungicide to help keep that crop healthy enough to use the nitrogen.
And when are we applying that nitrogen?
So we still don't know it all.
Okay.
So SMART 1. SMART is the trial name that we just finished. And all we looked at essentially was standard nitrogen rate with fungicides, and then high nitrogen rate with fungicides. And with 52 locations over 3 years, our average yield increase is 20 bushels per acre by adding nitrogen plus fungicide. And so economically, it costs us about 10 bushels, depending, but
right.
In the range of 10 bushels to add the nitrogen and add the fungicide. And we're getting 20, so we're basically doubling our money in this particular trial. The other really interesting thing that's coming out of the small plot research is that some varieties respond to this even better
right.
than other varieties.
Yes.
So our average number right now is looking like 20 bushels per acre on these really responsive varieties. It may even be more than that, but we haven't sorted that out yet. We're just ecstatic with 20 bushels because that's incredible.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about, integrated crop plans and, kind of the whole, managing the whole crop cycle. Is Europe taking it to, or are they doing that better than we are? Or are we just sort of just learning?
So I think what's intriguing to me is we tried this in the late 80s. We called it intensive cereal management. We brought the European technology over. We brought European varieties over, and we tried it, and it was an unmitigated disaster. It failed miserably.
Because?
We wonder if it was because those European varieties at that point in time just did not have the genetic potential to take advantage of higher nitrogen rates. Whereas now, we've applied it to new genetics. I mean, the difference between the genetics that we were using in soft wheat in 1988 and in 2008 is huge.
Massive difference.
Right? Massive difference, absolutely. So we're using current genetics, and we're back applying that same technology, and it's working for us. And it's always worked in Europe, but remember in Europe, the wheat crop grows for 10 months of the year. It never shuts down in the wintertime. It's a totally different environment. So just because it works for them does not mean it will work here. But right now, when we use it on our best genetics, it does look like it's working. Will it work on hard wheats, where our current hard wheats are different than they were 20 years ago, but they're still from Europe? Most of our hard wheats genetics come from Europe. We don't know. We haven't tried it there yet. But it may still not work on the hard wheats because they don't have enough top-end yield potential.
And you said using fungicides. How many applications of fungicides are they using?
So in Europe, of course, they use several applications, maybe sometimes 4 or 5, or even in extreme cases I've heard 7. I think that's rare, but
I think it's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive for sure. But typically, for sure, at least 3 or 4 or 5 would be very, very common there.
Okay.
But remember again that they're doing that. A fungicide gives you 21 days of protection, give or take. So if your crop is growing fairly aggressively in let's say March, and it's still growing aggressively and hasn't finished grain fill yet in July, well, there's a lot of 21-day windows in there that you need to
Yes.
give some disease control. In Ontario, it greens up 1st of April and it's done 30th of June, give or take. So it's a much tighter window, so we're never going to make as many fungicide applications as the European.
We could have 2.
Yeah, so in our trials, one is absolutely essential, and that's the fusarium fungicide. You just, I mean, from a quality standpoint, this fusarium...
We should be past that education.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
But that's the essential one. But it looks like on some of these responsive varieties that 2 fungicides will actually pay. And so, again, we have some further work to do there to know the exact timing of that first fungicide. As we've looked at weed control timing, we've looked at flag leaf timing, but in the data set, it's kind of intriguing. Some years weed control is best, some years flag leaf is best, and I really wonder if the optimum wouldn't be the first fungicide in the middle there sometime, and then the fusarium fungicide is the second fungicide, if that won't give us the biggest bang for the buck, but that work still has to be done.
There's still some research to be done there.
Oh yeah, the great thing about research is the more you learn, the more you find out you don't know, and the more you've got to do more
More
research,
questions,
right?
yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's way